What is it that separates a company that truly changes the world from one that's, well, just a footnote in history? It almost always boils down to a single, high-stakes decision, a gambit. Today, we're going to dissect the choices that define both legendary companies and the cautionary tales, all drawn from our source, the Business Gambit. This just nails it, right? It really gets to the core of everything. Behind every great company, there's a moment of just pure conviction, a bet on a future that almost nobody else can see. It's an act of courage that goes so far beyond a simple business plan.
So what is the secret sauce? What's the DNA of success versus failure? We've found 4 key principles that really seem to answer that exact question. Let's dive into the first one.
Okay, first up, we have to talk about WeWork. Back in 2016, if you walked in there and asked any department how things were going, they'd tell you they were absolutely crushing it. But the company as a whole, it was losing spectacularly.
Nearly $2 billion. That was WeWork's annual loss. So how on earth is that possible when every single team inside is celebrating victory? Well, it's because they were all playing different games.
So on the left, you see all the individual games. The real estate team, they were winning by signing a record number of leases. Marketing, they were winning with these huge viral campaigns. Sales was hitting all its targets. But here's the problem. None of it was aligned. They were all optimizing for their own metrics, not the company's actual survival. So while 10 different departments thought they were winning, the company was losing the only game that mattered, staying in business.
That lack of alignment is almost always a symptom of a much bigger problem, not having a crystal clear vision of the end game. And that brings us to Yahoo, a company that once absolutely ruled the internet, but ended up just completely lost.
Man, this timeline is just devastating to look at. In '98, they turned down Google's core search algorithm. 4 years later, they passed on buying the entire company for what now seems like pocket change. So why? Because they never actually defined their endgame. Were they a media company? A tech company? By trying to be everything to everyone, they became nothing special to anyone. And that strategic drift, it cost them everything.
Now for the complete opposite of that, let's look at a leader who saw the endgame with perfect clarity, Wendy Kopp. Her vision for Teach for America is a story our source material calls The Change We Seek.
See, most people think Teach for America is just about steps 1 and 2. Recruit great people, put them in schools. But Kopp's real gambit, her true endgame, was always step 3. Those 2 years of teaching, that wasn't the goal, that was the training ground. She was building an entire generation of leaders, future principals, future policymakers, future nonprofit founders who would spend the rest of their careers tackling educational inequality from the inside. That's not a 2-year fix, that's a 30-year vision.
Okay, so having a vision is one thing, but having the courage to bet everything on it, that's another story entirely. Which brings us to YouTube, and a bet that looked, to almost everyone, completely and totally insane.
So back in 2005, YouTube was just burning through cash. I mean, look at this. Their infrastructure costs were enormous, and their revenue was practically zero. The logical, sensible move would have been to cut costs, right? Instead, they doubled down. They bought more servers. They understood something fundamental. In a winner-take-all market for viral video, the only thing that mattered was having the capacity to handle that explosive growth when it finally came.
And there it is. That's the payoff. Just 2 years later, Google snapped them up for over $1.5 billion. Their courageous, uncomfortable bet on infrastructure wasn't just a good decision. It was the only decision that could have possibly led to this outcome. They didn't build a company to survive. They built it to win.
All right, our final principle might feel a little counterintuitive. Sometimes the path to winning over everyone is to start by obsessively, relentlessly focusing on a tiny, overlooked few. Let's compare Airbnb's breakthrough with Groupon's total collapse.
When Airbnb was just starting out, investors told Brian Chesky the market was too small. So what did he do? He made it even smaller. He ignored this massive global travel market and focused only on that tiny little slice, design conference attendees in New York who couldn't find a hotel room. By serving that small group perfectly, he turned 1,000 passionate users into evangelists, who then went out and opened the door to the rest of the world for him.
This quote just captures the flip side of that idea perfectly, and it brings us to our cautionary tale, Groupon, a company that learned this lesson the absolute hard way.
Groupon tried to be everything to everyone, all at once.
One day, it's a deal for a luxury spa, and the very next, it's for a pizza joint. This just created chaos. The high-end businesses felt like their brands were getting cheapened, and the quality customers got lost in all the noise. By trying to serve everyone, they ended up alienating their best partners and their best customers, which led to an 85% collapse in their value.
So after all these stories, the triumphs and the tragedies, what's the formula? Let's recap the 4 principles we've seen for building something that truly matters.
It really does come down to these 4 things. First, make sure everyone is playing the company's game, not just their own. That was WeWork's fatal flaw. Second, see your endgame with crystal clarity, like Teach for America did, so you can avoid the aimless drift that doomed Yahoo. Third, have the guts to make that uncomfortable but necessary bet, just like YouTube did with its infrastructure. And finally, serve a small niche perfectly to unlock the wider market. That was the secret to Airbnb's success.
And that brings us to the final question. And it's not just for companies, it's for all of us. The stories we've looked at today are about so much more than just business. They're about vision, they're about courage, and they're about that profound act of building a future that only you can see. So what future will you dare to build?